I have encountered on pretty much every project I've been on. Hey, welcome to the Agile Podcast. Almost every project that I've been on, I have come up eventually against the topic of when to split a team. So I figured we'd start with that today. Should we split a team? When's the right time to split a team? All about splitting teams.
All about splitting teams. Welcome. So let's talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So when or should we split a team? Well, more often than not, a team is scrumming, right? And a scrum team, if you think about the metaphor from rugby, it's a certain size.
Yeah.
And if you suddenly add twice as many, there's too many men on the field.
Yeah.
So you definitely need to think about that. But I think it's contextual. I'm not a stricter person who says, you must have 4.7 people on a team because that's what the Harvard study says.
Yeah.
Right? I think when the team finds itself in a place where things are getting more difficult, the channels of communications have grown so much that it's actually becoming a hindrance, that might be your time to think about splitting a team.
Yeah.
Right? But the other way you can split a team, there are many ways, which I'm sure we'll delve into. The other way is when you're delivering to a overall product, but now you've got teams that have specific portions of that, right, that they're working on, you may want to think about a logical fracture point there where you can split the team.
Yeah.
But I think I'm skipping ahead a bit maybe, because should you split a team? I would say, yeah. I mean, should you always have 3-course meals or 5-course meals? It depends how hungry you are.
Yeah.
I think you should split a team if your circumstances warrant it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a hard yes or a no or here's when type of thing.
I have, I'll throw at the risk of kind of sabotaging my own discussion. Yeah, this is like a it depends type of situation, but there are some things that I look out for. When I've been on a team as a Scrum Master, there are some things that I look out for. Our stand-ups hedging towards breaking 15 minutes. When the team starts coming close to being double digits in terms of people, I start getting real shifty about I don't know. The other thing that I can point out that's concrete, the length of the daily scrum would be one thing to me. Number one, the total number of people on the team would be another one. Because like I said, when they come close to double digits, I'm like, ooh, I don't know. I'm kind of looking out. I'm expecting a car crash. I'm driving my car and I'm looking down a highway and people are starting to swerve and stuff. And I'm like, it doesn't look like this. That's one of the indicators. And then I forgot the other thing.
If you think of it, interrupt me because I wanted to go there when you said, the length of the stand-up.
Yeah.
So yes, somewhere it says it should be 15 minutes, right? But I'm in the other camp. I'm the one who says it is what the team wants it to be. If the team says it always takes us 18 minutes or 20 minutes, then make it 20 minutes. If it's half an hour because there's value to be had, assuming you're running it more, efficiently, people aren't going off on tangents, deep diving into details and all of that, and then there's no harm in it, I would say. Now, of course, you can't do an hour because that's too long.
Yeah,
right?
I remember what I was going to say. If the thing's being talked about in the stand-up, one of the examples, I'm kind of jumping forward in our topics here because I already know one of the examples that I'm about to bring up, which is when I was a product owner, the teams that I have went through a split, and I very clearly remember I would come to a stand-up as a product owner, right? So I'm a product owner in this instance. And then I would listen to the tester and maybe 2 developers talk about one specific feature they were working on for that sprint. And then when the other 2 people on the team started talking about what they're working on, it was completely opposite. These other people on the team had nothing to do with what these other people were working on. So it's like half the team was working on this logical segment of functionality, and the other half the team was working on something that was completely unrelated and had nothing to do with it. That was an indicator to me of, okay, well, these people over here are checking out when these people over here start talking, and vice versa. They could care less what the others are working on. So that was an indicator of me to be like, well, it'd be much more efficient if you guys are just separated and you did your update about the work that the team, it was just a subsegment of a team. The team was working on, and then these guys basically stopped listening when it was this other group's time to start talking. But as a product owner, I felt that in the conversation. I don't know if the Scrum Master at the time, I don't remember if we had a Scrum Master at the time. I don't know if anybody else on the team really felt that way, the way that I felt that there was a clear divide. When these people finished, they were done and checked out.
Yes, this is what I meant when I said earlier, if the teams are working on components of a solution, right? If there's a natural point where they can be divided, and that's what you're describing, I think that would be a good thing. What you've got to always weigh up, though, is splitting the team up is mechanically it's fine, you can do that, but then what's the opportunity cost of doing that? It's making sure that team A understands what team B is doing and vice versa. Sure. And that this whole idea about not losing things in translation, right? I think you have to balance that, but I think you can easily do that if there's an efficient person to kind of orchestrate these events and so on, right? To facilitate the events. Yeah,
well, that's where a lot of companies have challenges, because then scaling comes in and then you have scaling challenges or whatever. But maybe we have different opinions on this. So I kind of think if you're not getting through the stand-up in, I'm going to call it a million different things because like over the years, stand-up, daily Scrum, whatever. If you're not getting through the daily Scrum in a relatively short amount of time, that's my first indication if I'm a Scrum Master. If I'm a Scrum Master on the team, that's my first indication that the team is too big, that the team is working on different things, or that there's people want the product owner's time to talk about their different challenges, but they're talking about so many different challenges that they really should have their own segmented times to talk with a dedicated product owner. That's my first indicator that there is an issue, or not that there is an issue. That's a definite thing. That I might want to dig to see if there's an issue. But I personally, I think that 5-person number, 4 point whatever, I really think like the teams that I've been a part of, I think that number is well justified from my own personal experience. I think that number is well justified. The best teams that I've ever seen have been around 4, 5, 6 people.
Yeah, look, there's a critical mass somewhere around those numbers, right? That works really well. That's optimal. But I've been on many teams that have had more people on it.
Sure.
As many as 10, right? Sometimes 11 people on it. But if they're all working on the same solution, it's really difficult to see how you could split them. Then the only option there is to basically go to 20-minute on your daily Scrum, 25, whatever it takes. But obviously you can't keep doing that and say, well, it's taken 45, so we'll go there. And you look at how things are being done. Some people love to talk, some people don't. But yeah, so I think it's contextual is what I started out by saying, and it still is, right? It's contextual. Sometimes splitting the team up actually is to the detriment of the product. And as a product owner, you might see that. The team members may not see that because they're working in those little silos, for want of a better word. But when you integrate everything together, then the parts don't fit because that's how they work together, right? Yeah, I would say that in my case, the team members didn't see it because in one sprint, very obvious to me, they were working in different, I'll use the word silos. They weren't working in silos. They were completely encouraged to work on whatever, but they found themselves working with specific people on specific features and that they didn't interact with. So on a certain sprint, they ended up separating into 2 teams organically. But the next sprint, they could have changed team members, you know what I mean, in between the 2 teams. The tester might have jumped over here with these developers, and they might have swapped depending on the features, and then that team kind of just worked it out. Yeah, that's a really good point. So just recently, not too long ago, I was on a team that was a bit bigger than the ideal, but they were doing 2 things. They were doing what they call KTLO, keep the lights on type of work, right? And production support. And a certain part of their work was also adding new features to this product that was supposed to be sunsetted, but then, the sun didn't set for a long time. So what this team ended up doing is, over time, organically, as you put it, they started looking at this thinking, this Scrum way doesn't work for us for the production support work because we get tickets coming at us left, right, and center. Occasionally they just come, and how do we just wait till next sprint? We can't, right? Yeah. So they self-organized into 2 teams, a production support team and a app dev team. Yeah. And they did that by themselves. which I thought was very commendable,
Yeah.
right? They ended up changing the way they actually tackle their work on, on the LM tool, right? One went to using more of a Kanban approach.
Sure.
But that worked very well. The downside was it's easy to say, let's just use a board, but you have to be good at it. And you have to be diligent about, using the board with those rules in mind, like working process, things like that. But once they understood that, they were fine.
Did they actually split into two teams?
They did.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, they split into two separate teams.
And the team prompted that split?
The team said, we never have to do that. They're doing that, but, we're in the sprint, but we have these tickets. How do we do this? Why don't we, 3-4 of us, just go over there and work on those? So that's what prompted this whole discussion. And I created a separate board for them initially, keeping them in the same team. And a sprint later, they're like, well, we're not sprinting anyway, so can we just be separate?
Right.
I'm like, okay.
Do you find that the team prompting the split is the norm, or do you find that is not the
That is absolutely not the norm. I wish it were the norm, though, because that means that the team is thinking about how they're working. Right? And that's pretty rare, unfortunately. So what I find more, of course, is the norm is that somebody external to the team or somebody like a tech lead will decide, oh yeah, I'm going to put so-and-so over here because I think they're best suited over there, right? Whether they really are or not, who knows, right? So it's directed in that sense by someone either within the team as a tech lead, architect, whatever, or someone outside of the team, like maybe the managers of these teams. In a matrix organization, it's particularly challenging because the manager says, I'm not having my person on there more than 60%.
Yeah.
And they're 40% over there. Well, that's great in theory, but in practice, they're 65 over here and 65 over there.
Yeah.
And that's the issue, right? That's one of the issues. Nobody asks the team members whether they want to be on a team or what they want to do. They're just being told, go stand in that line over there, right? Yeah. And that's a problem. That is pervasive, unfortunately, rather than the team organically saying, why don't we self-organize? The thing I liked about, just to go back to that example I cited, the thing I liked about that is this. The app dev team, just the nature of their work, they had 2 testers, and the tester that was available at any point in time would flip-flop between the 2 teams. So we encourage that. We encourage the BA to do the same thing, essentially. And that's because we didn't want to lose that domain knowledge. Yeah. Right? And that worked pretty well. Now, where it fell short is I would have loved if the developers circulated between the 2 teams. Because guess what happens after a while? After, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 sprints, right? People that are just doing prod support work are bored stupid. Sure. Because they just say, well, all we're ever doing is break fixes. And when we're not, we're bored. But when we're doing break fixes, everybody's on our behind, right, to get these things done, cracking the whip. And so they burn out. Or they get bored and they check out.
Yeah, we hit that topic several times. And nobody wants to be the maintenance developer. Let's take a pause right now on the video to say, if you are a maintenance developer or if you've ever been a maintenance developer, comment on this video because I would like to do a whole episode for someone. I should go on LinkedIn and ask if there's anyone in the Tampa area who is or has been a maintenance developer, because I would like to talk to them about like their specific experiences.
That would be great to have them on the podcast.
I think.
Please let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Yeah. But to jump back onto where you're going with that.
Yeah. So, I would have loved to have developers that are on the maintenance side of the house, so to speak, come back and forth. Right. Again, just for their own sanity, but as well, it maintains that domain knowledge. We didn't win that one.
I know this is not necessarily on our list of things to talk about, but usually I get this from tech leads or solution architects or whatever you want to call them, managers, development or whatever. They try to say, well, I want to trade people from team to team. I need to buff their skills or make sure they're current on whatever, or I want to give this person relief on maintenance so they're not doing maintenance the whole time or whatever. And they try to change the team members out. And then you as a Scrum Master obviously would be like, don't change my team members out. I need a stable team, because whenever you bump my team members out, I'm going to go back to the forming stage, and I don't want to do that. So you're going to fight them on that. And so I don't know who's justified. I don't know who's right or wrong in this instance. It's probably a balance of the both, because I remember when I was a manager, I would go back and forth with my boss at the time when he would say, dedicate someone to this product and then leave them on that product for but forever. He would say forever, but like he was basically implying, choose a period of time. I don't care what it is, 6 months, a year, whatever it is, and then dedicate a person to that. So they go super deep on a very thin set of skills, but then they go super deep learning it. And that's what he wanted. And then when you go to trade somebody out, then the team's got to go back to forming and stuff. And I always resisted him because I was like, that's not the way to build good teams. You need to have dedicated people on those teams that just stay with those teams. And I wasn't willing to shuffle people around. But let's think about this from the perspective of just a manager development. You want to shuffle your guys in and out of the maintenance teams back to your feature development teams because, number one, you don't want them to get burnt out. Number two, you want to keep their skills up to date. And you want to make them feel like they're contributing to the future of the product, not just fixing garbage all day.
Absolutely. You've got to get your bullpen out there sometime,
well,
right?
What's that balance? I mean, you can't be trading people in and out of the team every 2 sprints because then you're going to disrupt your team.
Yeah. So that's a great question. What is the balance? I think, again, and I'm sorry, I don't want to hide behind this like by saying it's contextual, but how about doing this? How about asking the team members, right?
Yeah.
Just say, what do you think?
Yeah,
and if they say, yeah, we think it's fair every month or so, whatever they say, just go with that because they're the ones doing the work. So I would leave it like that.
Well, what about keeping a core? Like, what if you have a core team, but then you just add one person for a period of time and then take that person off, so the team is not impacted? You're just adding somebody to the team.
Yeah. Here's my take on that, right? So we all know what a house of cards is, right? That's the core team. Okay, so you're going to add somebody to it. You're not going to remove anybody. Thank you. Add somebody, right? How are you going to do that? It's difficult to do that. You go right back to forming the minute you do that.
Yeah.
And I would say just don't. It's just not worth it, right? There's a fallacy of productivity increase. And the other thing, just to go back to what you were saying briefly about tech leads, SAs, whoever making the decision to move people. Mm-hmm. Sometimes what happens is they feel the pressure because a developer quit on a team somewhere over there.
Right.
So they're saying, I have that person with those skills on this project, but they're screaming over there. So I'm going to have that person also take on that project 20% of the time. There is no such thing as 20%. Then they're pulled into that project. And that's particularly bad if that project is of a higher visibility. I was going to say priority, but just visibility, right? Yeah. Because then that, in theory, it's 20%. On the spreadsheets, it's 20, but in practice, it's 80.
Perception.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I heard in my brain. Perceived. Yeah, absolutely. Visibility is perception in my brain, basically. Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So, so then what happens in reality is that developer ends up spending most of his time and attention on this other project, and the project they are on suffers as a result. Right. I've seen that way too often as well.
Right. If you're a Scrum Master, you're looking at it through the lens of, I have to protect my team from being changed because that's going to set me back in my organizational development, whatever model. But adding somebody to the team in order to help them skill up, to use a ridiculous industry term that I hate, it could be perfectly valid. I mean, I'm adding someone to your team who's junior, and all they're going to do is peer program with somebody else that's on your team.
I wish it were that simple. Because what happens? I mean, it sounds great, right? Yeah. But what happens in practice? This junior person comes in, they're going to need help.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
Through that initial KT period, they're going to need help. So the people that are on the team already aren't going to be as productive as they were before because they're now bringing this person up to speed.
Sure.
And so the overall, there's a downward trend, obviously, in productivity right there. But where your point is valid is if you're heading up to the point where you really need an extra team member, then, okay, you take the hit and you bring them in.
Sure.
And pair programming, mob programming, getting them up to speed quickly, you do everything in your power to do that, but you are informing. There's no denying that. And it doesn't even have to be with a new junior or whatever, right? It can be an experienced person that comes in. It's a new individual. The team dynamics go right back to forming again every single time without fail.
Yeah. My brain is going back into the pragmatic modes. Let's say I don't know why I keep going back to this role, but like a manager of development, director of development, somebody in that kind of role, someone clearly on the delivery side of the house. I'm delivering. I have a team. They've been together for a while, and I want to basically double my effectiveness. I want to build out another team that's a carbon copy of the team I have. I just want to duplicate the team I have. So like slowly over time, I'm going to bring in more developers and more developers and more developers and add them to my team. That yes, every developer I add to my team is going to slightly impact the velocity of the team as they get plugged in, and they kind of slow my team members down that are more experienced as they kind of pair program with them. But eventually we'll kind of rebound and they'll learn how to work together. Yeah, so good. But my goal as a leadership team member in that instance is I want to start building my team members up with extra team members, because in the future, in my brain, my vision in the future is to split that team in half and have people that are already trained by my other team members. It's not like I'm going to go out one day and just hire 6 more people immediately. That's not the way businesses expand. They expand by just adding a member here, member there, and then the team themselves organically kind of pull apart and realize that it's time to split.
So with that objective, yeah, that's actually probably a good strategy if that's your objective, right? Yeah. Absolutely. I wish there was like a 3D printer to clone a team, right? But there isn't. So yeah, in lieu of that, sure. But recognize that in your planning, you have to accommodate that,
sure,
right?
Sure.
If you're adding one team member every now and then, it probably doesn't have a huge impact, because everybody's just looking at an average over X number of sprints.
That'd be my goal. Yeah, that'd be my goal.
So then it will get absorbed in the peaks and valleys, right, over time. That's fine. Mm-hmm. That's not a problem. It's when we talk about splitting teams, or adding to teams. Adding to teams is less of an issue from this perspective, but splitting teams, if you just even move a team member, that I think has a bigger impact on the team.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, moving team members. I'm specifically going down the road right now of I'm a manager in the organization, a member of leadership, management, whatever you want to call it, and I am envisioning the future of there is a team split in my future, because let's say I'm coming up with like a 2-year plan or 18-month plan. I feel like that's the most management and leadership in organizations, like they have a difficult time seeing past 18 months. So let's just stick with 18 months. I know 18 months from now, I want to theoretically on paper double my development productivity. I'm a sane and logical manager in this organization. So I know in order to do that, I have 6 people, I need 12 people. Okay? One program, one product, I want to double. I have 6 people. I need 12 people. Makes total sense.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
So I need a plan to get there that's not so disruptive of my team, and it just doesn't knock their productivity way down, because they just have to go in and train and teach new people, make mistakes, whatever. So I'm going to slowly add people to the team over time. And again, since I'm leadership, I should be talking to my product owners and my scrum masters, the people that help drive my team forward. I should be talking to them and letting them know what my vision is. Like, much like you come up with a vision for a product over time, I'm letting you know what the vision is for my team over time. My program, basically, all my teams together, working together. The company, basically. If you want to break the company into a very small microcosm of like the larger organization or whatever, I'm letting everyone know, like, my vision is I want to double the rate of delivery, speed up. I don't know.
I think given that objective, that approach makes sense.
Yeah.
But to your point, absolutely. Get the vision, get it communicated, get buy-in from your product people, get buy-in from your organization, get buy-in from the team also. You're not necessarily asking permission here. What you're doing is just socializing the why. Or this is why you're doing it. Maybe they'll have some ideas. Right?
Maybe they will.
Listen to them.
That's the best management. Like, look, this is where I want to go. Organizationally, this is where I want to go. Like, what do you guys think? Like, maybe they have ideas. Maybe they can figure out, like, well, when we get to this point, we need to split, or we'll bring these people on or whatever, and then we'll split these people, and bring it to the team and let them tell you, and then you look like a superstar. But in reality, none of it was your ideas. You're just like, oh, this is what I kind of have in my mind.
Well, the best idea you had is to ask them the question. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know why that's so hard for so many people.
It's a simple 3-letter word, my friend.
It's ego. Hey. Oh man. It's funny. It is ego, but I think of the organizations that I've been in, and it's few and far between where the leadership has come out and said, Like, this is our vision for the future. Normally, when we talk about, in the podcast here, we're stuck in the Agile space and we're talking about delivery. And I mean, occasionally we venture up into the business to talk about discovery and that, that kind of stuff. Occasionally, maybe we talk about management or whatever. But it's not often that we talk about, well, management has a vision, and you can think of like all the products in the program together. You can think of as just like a product owner would think about their product. Management is thinking about all the teams together as a product. I mean, it's higher level, right? So it's more general. It's really high level. They should go through the same thing. Like, what is your vision? Can you communicate that vision to your teams? Can you ask your teams, how can you plug into my vision? And it's so general that it should be generally, it's so broad that it should be generally pretty easy to plug into, hey, this is a high level where I want to go. How can you guys help?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you may be touching on that whole, that whole human capital portfolio type of concept, right? As an organization, where do you want your people to grow to?
Yeah.
But that doesn't exist in a vacuum. Obviously, that has to be tied into your product or products, and see how you can fulfill the market with those products based on the need for each product line and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the idea of coming up with the vision that has to come from leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the what, but not the how. And then sharing that with the teams and say, how can we achieve this vision? First of all, what are your inputs toward the vision? Let's just even get that.
Yeah.
And then once everybody agrees, what's the best way? You guys tell us.
Yeah.
We're leadership. We don't do this every day. We don't know.
Well, again, this goes back to our scientific management theory sort of discussion that we bring up all the time. We just beat to death, which is management doesn't know the best way to do these things.
They've not done it before.
Because they've not, no, well, not only have they not done it before, but they have no idea how to do it.
That's right.
How can we double our delivery speed? Well, I mean, the obvious answer is like, we'll just
throw more people.
Yeah. Give me double the money, basically.
Yeah.
But there might be other ways. There might be other ways. I don't know. But to, like, I'm gonna hard pivot, jarring pivot back to the topic at hand. We're gonna assume that we've already decided we want to split a team. In the examples that I've been driving towards is kind of a management directed, we need more people, we need more people, we need more people. Because we're leading towards an eventual goal, doubling in productivity, whatever, efficiency, right? So we're growing the business, we're doing more things. We're leading towards an eventual team split. We all know it. Everybody on the team knows it, management knows it, we're all ready for it. So when we finally decide that we're going to go through a team split, how do we accomplish that? What does that look like?
That's an excellent question. So I think, first of all, assuming, like you said, we all know it. That means
we all know it.
It's been communicated. People know it. It's coming, right? So how do we do it? Again, it's going to sound repetitive, but we don't say this is how we're splitting the team, which is typically what we hear out there. Typically it's Mary, John, you're on that team, and Caleb, you're on that team.
Management.
Exactly. It's the directed.
Yeah, they come down and direct.
Yeah.
Right.
So instead, just say, here's the need of the hour. This is what we need to do. The team as it stands, obviously cannot do that. Do we all agree, right?
Yeah.
If we all agree, then what's the best way to do this? And say nothing after that.
Right.
Just let the team discuss this. Talk about it. They'll come up with, maybe they'll say, how about we split up into 3 little teams or whatever.
Who's
right?
posing the question? Who's raising the question to begin with?
So that again, it could be the product owner who has seen this, or in your example earlier, where as a manager or manager of developers or of the organization, you want to grow your capacity to be able to double it, let's say, for a delivery rate. So it could be coming from that source. It could be a developer that says, we've been trying to do this, but this backlog and the way it is, and I think this team is too big to be doing this.
Yeah, I'm going to say it because if I don't say it, I'm going to forget it. The way that team splits have happened in my experience is during a retrospective. Usually it's during a retrospective, but sometimes it's during just the course of the day, just the daily Scrum. A developer will say, oh boy, I'm not working on anything these guys are working on. Us 2, 3 people, 4 people are working on completely something different, and I don't care about any of this. obviously maybe they won't say it exactly that way, but they'll basically imply, I don't see any value in this half of our daily stand-up or this half of our sprint review. Sprint review is where I see it a lot of times because people will be like, oh, it's my time. It's my time to present. Oh, I got to wake up because I don't care about any of that. I didn't work on any of it. I didn't see it. I didn't test it. I don't know how it's coded. I don't know that part of the code. I don't care at all. Again, I, as a product owner, I do it as Scrum Master too. It's not just a product owner thing. I would say as a Scrum Master, you probably should be more in tune with the kind of the emotional flow of, well, these people really don't care about this. And then when you see people that obviously are kind of checking out because they don't care about whatever, you kind of should call it out and be like, oh, I see that you maybe you're not interested. Like, what do you think about this? You don't seem to be engaged. Is there a problem, or is there I don't know a better way to pose it, but I'm not trying to call you out in front of the group, but there's a way to bring it up to be like, oh, what do you think about this? What do I try to pull you in?
Well, I have nothing to contribute.
Yeah, and you're like, I didn't work on this. I don't really care about this. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't understand why I'm here. I could have joined the meeting 45 minutes late and I didn't miss anything. And to me, as a Scrum Master, that would stick out to be like, well, maybe we shouldn't be together.
Absolutely. You're spot on. So sometimes, and I'm sure you've heard this too, or come across this in your career. Sometimes people will say, we always seem to start off with X, Y at the beginning of the event. Mm-hmm. Why don't I join towards the end? Because, my stuff, I'm not interested in that early stuff. Or more likely, vice versa. Can we just start with my stuff so I can drop after 5 minutes?
Yeah.
These are all telltale signs.
I've seen that a lot, yeah.
Exactly. So if the team wants to bring these up, obviously foster it, listen to them. So we're talking about two different approaches, right? One from source from the team, and the other is more directed from outside influence.
Speaking of outside, at sprint reviews, I've seen, can we do a certain portion of the sprint review first, and then after X amount of time, the business users can drop off, and then we can continue the sprint review? Because maybe the other features are more of a technical nature or more of a back-end nature, and the end users don't care about it. And I'm like, well, doesn't that mean there's two teams involved here? A team that's more, actually that's not true. I caught myself in saying a lot of times on the podcast I will say things. Where am I? I'm right there. A lot of times on the podcast I will say things where I'm like, what do I really mean to say at this point? And then I think to myself, this example is kind of crap. Like this is one of those examples, because what I'm trying to say is it's not a problem with the team. It's a problem with the stakeholders that are invited to that review, because the stakeholders they're two different pools of stakeholders, and we need to just separate.
Respect their time, basically.
Yeah, respect their time.
Because they're going to check out, and the first group, if they don't hear what they want to hear, they've checked out already. By the time you get to them, the second group, it's like, it just doesn't work.
But that's your stakeholders are different is an indicator that your teams are too big.
Yes, absolutely.
I didn't think about that one. So how to split, how to actually, like, once you've decided that you want to split, we're just going to shortcut past that and say you've already decided you're going to split. So how are you going to go through the split? I think the obvious answer to me is you bring it to the team in a retro, like the whole team's together, and you say, look, I think it's time for us to split. What do you guys think? And what should the new teams be? And you just make it, basically, at that point, you end up making it the entire topic of the retro.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the best way to do it, as opposed to the directed, right? Like we said before, so-and-so goes over here, so-and-so goes over there. That's the worst way to do it, because they may not want to be over there. They'll come up with a proper way if you just ask them, right? But I think the thing to be mindful of as they're coming up with it, and something that they may not think about, so as a product owner, Scrum Master, right, we need to look at this and go, whatever they decide, look at that and say, what's the impact of things like domain knowledge? Are we going to dilute domain knowledge so much on one side that to the detriment of that team, right? So just strive for the balance to the best of, and then just, again, if you decide that's going to happen, don't take action. Just put it back to the team and say, I like the way you've come up with this idea. However, does this mean that we're going to lose domain knowledge in Team A, right? And will Team A suffer going forward? Well, how do we tackle that? And again, they'll come up with the best way for that as well, right? So I think that we have to come up with those kinds of prompters that they don't necessarily think about because they just haven't been through that maybe as many times.
The obvious way to deal with that I've seen is they have a team member be shared between teams. Like, well, this person will be 50% shared between this team and 50% shared between that team. But in actuality, they're not 50-50 because they have other things to do. So it's more like 25% here, 25% there.
Yeah, there's certain models that really have worked well. So one is, that person is not 25-25 or 50-50 or whatever, but on a given topic, they're available to you to consult as you need. Bring them in for that. Bring them into your refinement for when you're discussing that topic because they have something to contribute. And so just make sure the team division isn't hard. It's logical. It's not a physical, so to speak. Use a database analogy. Team members need to be aware that just because they're in Team B doesn't mean they're exclusively on Team B. They should be willing to help out as and when needed. So roll up your sleeves and pitch in.
Or you take the approach of cutting them from teams completely as a team member and then sort of put them outside with where your leads sit and where your management or whatever sit. In larger programs, you have a whole team of leads that are their own, that don't really get assigned work, but they kind of work in and out. You know what I mean? They kind of come in and come out of teams' work. They kind of
like
dip
a shared services model?
Yeah, kind of like that. But they're more like, let's say you had a program that had 8 teams, but you only had 2 UX people. They might sit with one team for a sprint or 2, but then they would bounce out for another, you know what I mean? Because not every single team is touching the front end every single sprint. So those people wouldn't just sit on a team permanently forever. But in the team model where everyone has to be part of a team, they would sit on some kind of shared, pool of resources. Again, with your architects, maybe you have, like, if you're working in data, you have like data modelers and stuff like that, like
DBAs.
DBAs. People have very specific skill sets where it's not cost effective to the organization to give every team somebody like that. I mean, maybe every teams have a certain level of skill, but you have to go back to that person to either verify your work or to peer program with you or whatever, and those people just sit on a separate team.
I think you're right. UI, UX, and data modelers, the DBAs are those are good examples of people that just sit with the team for just enough, and then they're back to where they were. They're never sitting around though because they're in demand all the time. It makes sense to use people like that as and when needed. And it's like you said, cost effective. It's the most cost effective for the organization to do it that way because these people are highly prized anyway. So, and they're rare in terms of their availability. So, it makes sense.
To summarize this topic, so to go through, to kind of put it to the team, to let them take ownership of their own splitting up, to kind of make sure they're not negatively impacting the products, the product lines, the expertise, kind of what we talked about. Are there any caveats? Is there anything we should steer away from, like how not to go through a split? Aside from the management directed split or the any kind of like fear and doubt controlling type of, that's a whole different subject. Are there any gotchas that can kind of trip up a team when they're going through a split? I think there's 2 parts to those kinds of things, right? So one is people like to work with people they know. And so what's going to happen is you're going to have people that have worked well together go, we're going to be on one team, right? And you look at that and you go, wait, no, that's not going to work. Here's an example. So let's say you have somebody who specializes in they're a developer, but they have specialized skill sets in CI/CD, right? And so they're going to go on one team. But what's going to happen to the other team with respect to their CI/CD? So things like that we have to be mindful of. Those aren't the best ways to split a team. Like just because they work well together means they should be on the same team. It should be need-based. And so I'd make those guys essentially floaters and maybe take somebody else under their wing from the other team to bring their skill set up. So you're not just waiting on one person. Obviously, directed is not the best way. Somebody giving you a sheet, virtual sheet, and go, this is your team now. Right? Go with that. How often does that happen? A lot.
As a Scrum Master, you get to a team and your team's assigned for you, and they go, this is what you got to work with. And later on, you decide to split, and they go, we can split the teams. Here are your 2 teams. They decide for you. And that is not the way to do it.
Well, like the management, I want to walk down this path because I think it's a very tenuous path to walk down. Because in my role when I was a manager, we went through a team split not we, because I was a manager, so I didn't split anything. But I remember the teams where my people were part of went through a split. And my direction was, your comment kind of brought this up in my memory. I had 2 people on my team that they loved working together. They absolutely loved working together. They wanted to be together all the time. They wanted to peer program all the time. They were inseparable. And I was like, you guys can't be on the same project. Because basically they had, between the 2 of them, they had all the domain knowledge of one product. And I was like, you guys can't be on one team, because then all the domain knowledge is on one team completely, and then the other team has none of the knowledge at all. I was like, yeah, it'd be great if we could train the other team up, where then you guys could be together and get what you want. But I was like, that is not the way it is now. I can't have you, So in that instance, I had to influence as a manager to say, I know that you guys want this, but I can't have all the skill be on one for that specific domain. I can't, which was it was a mobile product. So everybody I had in the department all had skills on the enterprise project, but only a few people had skills on the mobile product. And then the mobile people just loved working with other mobile people. They didn't want to work with anybody else. And I was like, look, you have to spread your skill set out.
Yeah. So I don't know how many times I've seen that, where it's sometimes it's even like a couple of different product owners for some portions of a product. So now you have clickism. 2 people work well together, go over there, and this product owner doesn't really have that benefit of having the domain knowledge. And the product owners don't see that, right? So it goes along, and suddenly you find, oh, we're in trouble now with this other team. But that first team, they're rocking it. They work well together, plus they have the domain knowledge, which is kind of like the worst thing ever. But when that happens, you get into this thing where instead of making it better for the whole organization, you get into it where people go, yeah, but the hole's on your side of the boat.
Right.
It's like, we're in the same boat.
Right.
If the hole's on your side, or it doesn't matter. We're going to be sunk soon. I try and think about that and go, if that's coming up, I'm going to get ahead of that as you're splitting the team. Now, here's another radical thing. I don't even know if we have that on our list.
Oh,
how
perfect.
Not to, right? How not to split.
Okay.
But this one, I think, sneaks into the previous one. How to. So it's a radical approach. Why not have the team members go back and forth all the time, instead of being permanently on the one? Like, for example, for a sprint, you have a team, but they're kind of almost like a nebulous team. They're working together. However, next sprint, some may still be there, some may not be there. They'll just be over there, and vice versa. So that takes care of the domain thing. But the flip side of that is you have to manage the communication channels. You have to manage that they can actually effectively communicate and things don't get lost in translation or just get dropped.
Yeah.
But I think that's manageable. That might be I'm keen to try that approach next time.
I don't understand what you're saying. You're just going to have people float between teams?
I'm saying exactly that. For a sprint, people who are working on the need of the hour, the next sprint. So it doesn't really matter. They're not wedded to a team. They're just focused on the problem at hand, which is the stories that are in the sprint. Whoever's best able to tackle those stories will be in that team, right? And same with the other team. Whoever's best able to tackle those stories.
You blow my mind right now.
I don't know, man. I'd have to try it.
I don't understand what's happening right now. It sounds like total anarchy is happening.
It is completely radical.
The Scrum Master in me is like, I don't understand.
I know. So I'd love to treat that as an experiment for a couple of sprints and see how that goes. I would really love that opportunity. Next time that happens, I'm going to try it.
Sounds like craziness.
I know, it is craziness.
I don't like being forced into the role of being an irrational one in this conversation. Thank you very much. I'm very uncomfortable where I'm at right now. Your team needs some sort of stability. Like, if it's a small program, and program meaning a product with multiple teams working together at the same backlog. That's what I mean by program. Mm-hmm. If it's a program with a small program, let's say a program with 2 teams, and yes, you have some people kind of floating between. I kind of see that as like one team pulling subject matter experts from another team to kind of help and advise them as they go do their work. And I can kind of conceptualize it with that. What I'm not expecting is for half the sprint, some of the developers from group A go over to group B to peer program with some people, and then vice versa, some of the testers come over. That just seems like, you don't have well-formed teams.
Yeah, no,
to me.
So I'm not suggesting that for within the sprint that people move around like Brownian motion, right? What I'm suggesting is for a sprint, you look at the backlog, people do what they do, and they go, this is our sprint backlog. This is how it looks. This is how this one looks over here.
Yeah.
And then the team looks at both of those and go, Robert over here can be helping with that. Okay, so there's one or two things he can help with there compared to over here. Why don't you move over there, Robert? Right? But for the sprint, not for a day, and then he comes back.
Yeah.
That gets hard to manage.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the next level that I haven't even thought about.
I don't know, man. I think when you get to that point, when you're jumping people back and forth from team to team like that, you seriously need to consider just smashing those teams together and making them one team again. Or not again, but consolidating the two teams together to make them one team. That brings us to a point that I actually have here as a note, which is when to consolidate the teams. I'm considering what you're talking about from the perspective of Team A and Team B are separate. Maybe there's 5 people per each, Team A, Team B. But people on Team A are starting to work on features that intersect with stuff that Team B did in the past because it's all one product, right? So people from Team B need to come over to help them train, help them increase their knowledge about the different features that were implemented, help them walk through code that Team B did in the first place. Or testers usually do this a lot more than developers, from my experience anyway.
For sure.
So, which is they'll come over and they'll help. Like the tester on Team B will come over when Team A starts working on stuff that Team B did in the past. And the tester from Team B will come over to help the tester from Team A because they know how all the features work.
Yep.
So Team A is now extending the features that Team B did, but it's all the same product. So the testers will work together, even though that tester from Team B is not working in the sprint on Team A stuff. Maybe it's time to just smash those two teams together and just roll them all back up to one larger team.
That is a good segue into that topic because if you had people that were moving between Team A and B, as I was just suggesting, right, and you had a lot of that happening, lot being a relative term, then that's a smell test that maybe there should be one team.
Yeah.
But I think if you had some of that, it's manageable. I really am eager to try it. Maybe 1 or 2 team members that flip-flop between, not the same people necessarily, but 1 or 2 count-wise, right? Go from Team A to B and vice versa. Well, I know what I'm going to gain. I'm going to gain the fact that there's spread in the domain knowledge, right? Definitely. But I'm also going to lose if the team members are not the same that have been together for a period of time.
Right.
So this doesn't work if you've got churn. It doesn't work. There are many reasons to avoid churn. This is just another one. But as a concept, I'd love to try that out.
I was going to say, again, I'm back in Scrum Master territory.
Sure.
I don't know if I would even bother trying to track or trying to move people over for capacity or whatever. I don't know if I would even bother with that. I would just say all of this is assumed in each individual team's velocity. That you'll come over from Team A and you'll spend some time with a member of Team B doing a little pair programming or a little test management or a little test creation, et cetera, test planning. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's just assumed that a certain percentage of your time is being spent helping this other team. And that's just what good teams do. They go where they're needed and they help other people and don't worry about it impacting your velocity. Yes, it helps us as a team, but I'm not even worried about items in the backlog or whatever. You probably have your own work items in your own sprint backlog to get done. And you're spending some time helping the other teams get through their stuff. But, all that stuff will even out over time as the other team, maybe in the future, you'll find yourself in the opposite position. And Team B has to come over to Team A. And me as a Scrum Master, I'm just going to ignore that. Maybe you come to your stand-up in the morning and you say, Team A, stand up. I'm the tester for Team A. Hey, I didn't move any of these items forward yesterday. I'm looking to get into them today and move items forward. But yesterday, I helped Team B move their items forward because they were working on this feature that we did a couple sprints ago, and they were extending the capabilities, and I had to help them understand how to test it. And maybe later today, I hope to get back on our task of the sprint. And then everyone hears that, and they're like, okay, you're managing it, you're dealing with it. Cool, no problem. And everybody knows that you have to help the other team that's working on product backlog stuff for your product because you're both teams in that. to figure it out. You know,
but you've got to actively support that. That's the thing. Because people go, "What are you doing over there? You're on my team." We're on the same team.
Yeah. Well, I figured from the example that you're using, a certain amount of we're all working together was already assumed, because if not, then it really is just absolute chaos with like just team members being pulled on whatever the fire of the day is. Team members being pulled, and teams are never really permanent. And I was trying to avoid the situation looking like that, because at that point you're not dealing with consolidating teams. At that point, it's just like it's just a mess. It's just an absolute chaos, and you don't really have any permanent teams.
Yeah. No, that's very true. That's very true. So I think if you expand that into from team A, B to team A, B, C, right?
Yeah.
If it's a bigger program, more than 2 teams, or A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah.
I still think it can work. So in this model, we're not talking about putting people out for a sprint at a time onto different teams, right? We're just saying the need of the hour for a given story. If you need a tester to go over and help out, or whatever, it could be a specific skill set that a developer has, then fine. And all of these vanity metrics be damned, right? It doesn't really matter. We're still moving forward on this.
Well, the metrics will still be the metrics. They will still be accurate and important. It's just the fact that you have people floating between teams. The people are floating between teams to help and to decrease the gap of product knowledge or whatever. But that should be an assumed overhead. That should be no problem.
There should be no problem as long as you're viewing the metrics at a program level.
Yeah.
Right? If you're just judging the team individually,
you can't. Like,
I know, but
how can you do that? But if you're a product, you have to take it. If you're in the product space, you have to take a systems approach to all of your teams contributing to the program.
Absolutely.
If you're not doing that, like, you're just being pedantic at that point. Like, what are you just looking out for yourself at that point?
So if you've got 5 teams, right, contributing to a product, and you have 5 POs, if you're lucky enough, it's very rare that they all get together and say, whatever's happening here with the teams doing this is for the common good. It's very rare because they have their own accountability. And so I think it's up to the coach to say, yeah, but we're moving the whole thing forward.
Yeah.
It's like driving a car, saying how many revs does the left rear wheel do versus the front wheel, right?
Yeah.
Front driver wheel, whatever. You know what I mean?
I understand.
It's that the whole thing is moving forward. You're enabling that as opposed to the individual. And there's a lot of focus on the team level, unfortunately.
Yeah, ridiculous focus though. You should cut those people out of your life. Like, they're not.
I wouldn't miss them. Trust me.
They're not moving you forward. You should cut that kind of negativity out of your life.
Absolutely.
You don't need that. The point of this conversation was, if people are swapping between teams, like, this is, I think, where we kind of disagree, but I think if we can find an agreement on one thing, it's this. If you are finding that people need to swap between teams on a pretty regular cadence in order to get things done, I think you're better off just consolidating those 2 teams together into one team. If the features that they're working on inside of one product, right, because that's what we're talking about, if they can't live without each other's input, if they can't live without each other's help, if they have to collaborate or whatever, you should collapse the 2 teams together.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we disagree on that. I think the split was wrong. In that case, right?
Yeah.
So you need to take a look at that. Do you really need to split?
Yeah.
And so put them together, and then at a future date and time, if you still need to split, think about it then.
Now, here's one of the things that I'll bring up, because I went through this as a product owner. As a contract product owner, I brought on a permanent product owner. I was always going to bring on a permanent product owner when the end of my contract was near, right? So I brought on a permanent employee at the company I was at, and that product owner's attitude was, well, why do we have 3 teams of 5 people? Because now I have to go to 3 different daily stand-ups every morning, and I'd rather just go to one, and we can just have everyone's, air quotes, status updates, air quotes, status updates.
There's nothing wrong with that.
In 15 minutes. But that was his thing. That was his thinking. That was his thinking at the time, which was like, I want to save my time. But every single team, I had 3 separate teams, and they were small teams. They were 5 to 7 people, small teams. And each team was working on a different feature in the same product. Every team was working on something different. So basically, if I collapse all, and I told him several times, I was like, well, if I collapse all the teams together, yes, you will save time, but you'll have 4 to 7 people in the first 5 minutes of the stand-up who are talking about their progress on a specific area of the code, and then they won't care about the other 2 logical segments of developers and testers. They don't care at all, because they don't care about those requirements. They weren't in the product backlog refinements for that stuff. They didn't talk to the users. The big part that we leave out, that we've left out of most of this discussion, they don't know those users. They don't talk to those users. I almost want to say they don't care about those users, but they've not been exposed to those users. The user-centric piece, they're not developing software for the users that the other developers are developing software for, so they're checked out. And that was the biggest thing I was trying to convey, and I don't know, maybe I did, maybe I did not convey it very well, before I transitioned over. Because to the product owner, they don't look at it like, they look at it as like, if each stand-up is 15 minutes, they have to spend 45 minutes every day in the morning.
So think about it this way, okay? Yeah, I get where they're coming from. Yeah. 45 minutes of their time, their precious time. Right. Here's the thing, though. So by having all 3 teams, let's assume 5 people, because the math's easier. 5 people, 3 teams, that's 15 people. First 5 minutes, the 5 people are basically going through their stand-up piece. Yeah. The other 10 people don't care. Or are just in wait mode. I shouldn't say they don't care. They're in wait mode. So you've got 10 minutes, right? They've got 10 minutes times 10 people. Right. That's 100 minutes. You've already exceeded the other guy's 45 minutes by double and then some. And then that's only the first team. And then the second team gives their updates and goes through their synchronization. And now you've got 2 teams for their piece. They're 5 minutes, 5 times 10 people, so that's 50 minutes. You see where I'm going with this? Yeah. So the numbers are so against this guy. Yeah. So if you just illustrate that and go, this is what you're saving, it's a negative savings by a magnitude, right? Yeah. Let's not do that. I mean, that's convincing, because the maths is the maths.
Yeah, well, he was in the mode of status update type of thinking. Yeah, that's where he was. That's where his brain was. His brain was not in the, let me keep the number of interpersonal communications to a minimum for the purpose of collaborating to make sure we're getting the best product. That was not where his mind was. His mind was, let me collect the status from where this feature is at from this team, so if management asks me, I'm not struggling or whatever.
I like those kinds of demands from people, because there's no reason for them to be in the stand-up to get those statuses. There's dashboards that they can go and consume, right?
I agree.
So,
I agree. It would have been better for him in that instance, if that was what he was looking for. It would have been better for him in that instance to say, hey guys, I'm not going to come to the stand-up anymore, but you need to figure out a way to make it completely transparent to me, where I can go to one place and understand exactly where you're at, and put it on the team and the Scrum Master to just figure out how to get him that information, if that's the way he wanted to work with the team. I would have certainly strongly disagreed with that method of, air quotes, management.
I would have too.
Because I'd have been like, well, you're trying to not be a product owner.
Exactly. So you're robbing the team of the opportunity to ask clarifying questions. Right? Which they can do that at the stand-up.
I think that's kind of like, that's what kind of ticks me off about the 2020 Scrum Guide, is like when it says like, oh, the daily stand-up is only for developers, and only if the product owner and Scrum Master are developers should they have that. It does not say the Scrum Master and the product owner should or need to be at the daily stand-up or the daily Scrum.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't like that. I don't like that revision.
I don't like it either, but I look at it differently. Here's how I look at it. It doesn't say you need to be there. It doesn't say you do not need to be there.
Right.
So I look at it that way and go, whoever needs to be there, please be present. Right. Yeah. And so that extension goes out to the product owner, the Scrum Master. You know, really, in my view, and this is going away from the Scrum Guide, in my view, the Scrum team is getting together to synchronize. They're not getting together to huddle for some kind of secret mission, right? No. So anybody who wants to take a look or listen in or whatever, they're welcome. But don't disrupt the process and just observe. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah.
You know, I think that having said that, it depends on your team dynamics. Some teams, they don't speak up when a member of leadership is present.
Right.
And so if that is the case, I would make sure that doesn't happen, right? Because you want the team to speak. That's why they're there.
Yeah, I kind of want to go into this, but I also kind of want to wrap this session. What I want to go into is like, I wish the tools would follow along where like if you're on Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever, I wish you could invite the different invitees. I wish you could invite people as participants and invite people as observers. And then the observer people that you invite, they can't text comment, they can't speak, you know what I mean? They're auto muted. I wish the tools would catch up to the way I want to work.
So I'd go a little further. I agree, first of all, right? I agree with that. But, you know, because it's telepresence, Zoom, Google Meet, whatever, all of these two, Microsoft Teams, people can see who is in the meeting. And that shuts down some of these guys that won't say anything. So I wish there was a way the tools say the observers could be, you know, suppressed from being shown.
Yeah. Or maybe just say you have observers and then not tell them who are the observers.
Yeah, just anonymize them, right? Observer A, B, C, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, I think that would be okay.
That'd be a smart way to do it. Yeah, like the way the mural does it. Yeah, you're anonymous ostrich and be like, oh, that's me. Yeah. That would be a smart way to go about it. So you know that you're being watched by people that are not on your team. However, you know, all they can do is, but you know, they would send you emails, blow you up in Slack, Messenger, whatever, you know, whatever applications they have. But the point is, you know that you're being observed, but they cannot override your stand-up. Yes. They're just an observer. They're just
disruptions.
Yeah. That, I mean, honestly, like, I'd be fine with that.
I think so too. I agree.
Maybe
I wish there was a way you could do that directly from the LM tool rather than in Mural or Miro. Mural or Miro. That's a
I understand.
Tongue twister.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, I want to talk more about when management interferes with your teams, because I've seen that, because when they control the budget, they feel like they control your team. You know what I mean? They feel like they have some kind of ownership. It's a fallacy. They don't really own the team. They really shouldn't be without any kind of evidence or any kind of further insight. They really should be going to the team to work details out. But I feel like this is enough now where we should just cut it off here and think about the future of this discussion and maybe have a separate session on this. I think we really could have a whole different discussion on this. You know, maybe invite somebody else onto this topic to have a discussion about.
That would be cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So splitting teams, when to split teams, how to split teams, what to do, what not to do. If you have comments on this topic, please add them below over there.
Let us know your experiences of splitting teams and how things went if you would care to share.